Are you looking for some vintage Easter decor to add to your home this year? I have several projects for you today that are absolutely gorgeous, and I know that you are going to love all of these. Thank you for stopping by Lavender and Lace. I'm Alicia. Welcome back to my viewers that come and see me each week, and hello if you are new here. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and I hope you will consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. And also, this video is part of the 5 Under 5 collab, and I will tell you a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. And let's get started with today's Easter projects. I found these really cute vintage bunny designs on Creative Fabrica, and I will link that for you guys in the description box. And all I did was uploaded them into Canva. I like to use that for my designs and things, and then that just allows me to easily resize these for the project that I am going to be working on. And I found these ceramic coasters at Dollar Tree, and I picked up 2 packs of those, so there's 2 to a pack. So you get 2 for $1.25. That's a really good deal. And they also had some circle ones that I picked up as well, but I wanted to use these square ones for this project. And I just used some Mod Podge and put a thin layer over the top of each of my coasters. And I used a fan brush for that this time, and that's the first time I have tried a fan brush for Mod Podge, and it worked really well. It just smoothed that out nice and evenly. And I let those dry completely. And I had printed out my little bunny designs on some tissue paper, and I just put that onto the top of a regular piece of computer paper, taped it down, and made sure to print my design on the matte side of my tissue paper. And then I just cut out each of my designs to go onto each of my coasters. And I just centered those on the top of my coasters as best as I could. And I used a Teflon sheet to protect my tissue paper. And I used my little Cricut mini press just to reactivate that Mod Podge and heat that up and apply my design to the top of each of my coasters. This is a very quick and simple project that you can do, but I just love the designs on these, and these are going to be so cute in my living room this year. And I used a jumbo fingernail file and just went around all of the edges on each of the coasters and removed any of that excess tissue paper. And to seal my design, and I will actually be using these as coasters, so to protect them for any moisture, I just put another layer of Mod Podge on the top of each of these and let those dry completely. And these are so cute, and I just love the vintage vibes that I get from each of these designs. What do you guys think about this one? I am so excited to be a part of this month's 5 Under 5 collab. This is hosted by Emily from Farm Charm Chic, and her guest host this month is Wendy from White Sparrow Living. Be sure that you guys check out both of their channels in the description box, as well as the playlist. You will be able to find a lot of Easter DIY inspiration there. Now let's get back to our projects. I had a couple of these little metal buckets that I picked up from Dollar Tree, actually when everything was still $1. I've had them just using them in my decor for different things, and they were a little bit too shiny for me. So I let them soak overnight in some vinegar, and I just used that rock to weight those down. If you want to have a little bit more rust color, be sure that you rough these up with some sandpaper first. And just to add a little bit of decoration to my buckets, I used a couple of designs from Couture. These were their smaller ones and came in, I can't remember what the name of this particular design packet was, but I'll see if I can find that for you guys if it's still available. And I just fuzzed those really well before I applied those to the outside of each of my buckets. and I used my bright white chalk paste and one of my small squeegees and just applied that to both of these transfers. Where that metal had kind of corroded a little bit on the buckets, the paint did not stick very well, or the chalk paste, excuse me. But I was okay with that. I really wanted these to look old and worn and vintage. So I was happy with how this turned out. If you don't like that look, you might want to use a decal or stickers or something else that would give you a cleaner finish to that. And I had some of these little plastic eggs left over in my stash. They had them at Hobby Lobby this year for $3, and Easter stuff was 40% off. So I wanted to kind of color these like you would regular Easter eggs, but I wanted mine to be kind of pale pastel colors. So I took a pink, a blue, and a green, and then I added just a little bit of each of those colors to some white acrylic paint. Just mix those until I was happy with the color that I got. And I did a couple of coats of paint on each of my eggs. I did 2 pink, 2 blue, and 2 green. So the pink was Waverly, the green was Waverly, and then the blue was the Seaside Blue from Deco Art. And I recently had the opportunity to try out a new glue gun. I'm always crafting and I'm always looking for a new glue gun, and this is a rechargeable cordless glue gun. This is the Bleds brand. I hope I said that right. That you can find on Amazon. I will link that for you guys if you want to check it out. It comes in this really neat carrying case so you can take it places if you need to. It comes with a stand, your charging cord, your instructions, and your glue sticks. And all you have to do is charge this. It did take a couple of hours to completely get that fully charged. Then you insert your glue stick and turn that on, and it heats up in about 3 minutes, you guys. And then it is hot and ready to go. And I was able to use that glue gun for this entire project without having to recharge it. So this is one that I really enjoyed using, and I will be using this a lot for my crafting. And it stayed heated and held its charge for probably about an hour and a half. So if you are looking for a new glue gun, just check this one out. So back to the project, I had just grabbed out a lot of different ribbons, twines, lace, things like that I have in my stash. That little beaded self-adhesive ribbon sticker there. And I added just some different colors, materials, and things to each of my eggs for this project. I wanted these to have kind of a vintage, shabby chic vibe to them. So I had a lot of fun with these, and I actually kind of kept with the pink theme for the pink eggs, the blue for the blue, and the green for the green. So I just added a lot of different things that I thought went well together on each of my eggs, and I added a little bit of Spanish moss to a couple of them as well. And I added some small jute twine shoelace bows to some of those, and I finished some of them off with some tiny little buttons that I had in my stash. Feel free to use whatever embellishments that you have in your stash. I just wanted to inspire you guys to create these, and I love how all of these turn out. These are super cute and add just a really pretty vintage touch to these Easter eggs. And just to kind of fill in my buckets a little bit, I just wadded up some brown paper that I keep on hand. I save this whenever I get packages delivered in the mail. And I just added a little bit of hot glue to the top of that paper so my Spanish moss would stay in there and not fall out of my bucket. And I didn't glue that paper in, so I could easily just take out the entire thing if I wanted to add something else to these buckets. It'll easily just pull out for me. And I just placed my eggs in each of my buckets. I did 3 per bucket. Just did a dry fit to see how I wanted to put them. And I just added a little bit of hot glue to the bottom or the side of each of my eggs and glued those to the top of my Spanish moss. And that is it for this, you guys. How cute are these? I just love these little egg buckets, and I always enjoyed coloring eggs at Easter time when I was a kid and enjoyed that with my kids as well. So this was just a fun take on that. I picked up one of these wooden eggs from Dollar Tree probably back in February, I guess. Wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to DIY with this one, but I had some of this self-adhesive tile in my stash as well, and I love the texture and the design on these, so I always like to use that for projects. I just traced out my egg on my self-adhesive tile and just cut that out. And when you do this with the tile, if you cut that out, it just removes that sticky backing from the back side of the tile, which is okay for this. It just easily glues down. So I just peeled that backing off and just removed that completely. And then I just used some of my Eileen's clear tacky glue. I started to use hot glue. I have done that before, but it kind of leaves some bumps and ridges under your tile, and I didn't want that, and you have to work really quick with the hot glue. So I just opted for the tacky glue for this one, and it does help me be able to kind of move that tile around if I need to, if I didn't get that lined up correctly on the first try. And I just used some of my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, and I gave this 2 good coats just to cover up all of that navy blue color on this design. And I grabbed some of my rub and buff in the Spanish copper color, and I just applied that with an old dishcloth that I use. I keep that in my craft room specifically for my projects that I use the rub and buff with. And I just went over all of the raised area of that design so all of that would pop, and I just love this effect, you guys. I love how it turns out. Looks very vintage and distressed. And just to add a little bit of color to this project, I pulled out a lot of my mesh ribbon that I had on hand. I picked this up last year in the spring, I think. So I've had this in my stash for quite some time. I just cut off some longer sections that would be long enough to wrap around my egg and tie those, and cut those down into smaller strips. And then I just started layering all of my colors and got those into a pattern that I was happy with. So I used a peach color, a yellow, a blue, and then one that was very sheer that had some gold leaves on it. And then I just laid my egg down into the center of all of my mesh ribbon, just tied that on the front into a knot, just secured that really well, and that kind of makes like a little pocket on the front of my egg, and you guys will see in just a minute what I decide to do with that. And I took just a few more little pieces of my mesh and made a very simple bow and just fluffed out those loops. And before I glued that bow down, I went through all of my florals and my greenery and just cut some smaller pieces of each of my picks that I wanted to use for this project. The boxwood I get from Walmart, and these little smaller white flowers, I picked those up from Hobby Lobby recently when the florals were 40% off. The lavender and the smaller yellow ones came from the Dollar Tree. So I just cut everything down into the size that I needed it, and all I did was tuck it under that mesh ribbon. I was originally going to glue that down, but I decided not to. I will be able to change these out if I want to. Just easily pull those out. And then I added just some hot glue to the center of the mesh there on the front and added my bow and just fluffed up my loops a little bit. And if there was any of the little stems that were sticking out from my greenery, I went in and just trimmed those with my wire cutters and trimmed up my ribbon just a little bit. And that is it for this one, you guys. I think these would be so pretty if you had them as centerpieces for an Easter party or even a spring wedding maybe that was close to Easter time. What do you guys think about this one? For this next project, I grabbed several different types and colors of fabric that I had in my stash. Some of these came from Dollar Tree, like this pink and brown burlap fabric, and I also had a couple that I used from Hobby Lobby. So I just unrolled this fabric, and this one was super wrinkled, these that came from the Dollar Tree. So I just used my little mini press just to iron out all of those wrinkles. I did spray a little bit of water on my fabric first just to help get all of those removed. That seems to work a lot better when you're working with super wrinkled fabric like this one was. And I started cutting out my fabric into smaller strips. My strips were either between 5 to 7 inches in width, and this fabric from the Dollar Tree is 21 inches long. So I didn't trim down the length of that, just the width. We are going to be making some very cute little fabric bunnies. I can't wait for you guys to see these. These are super cute. And I just made sure to trim these up and try to get these as even as I can, just because I'm going to be putting these together and I wanted my seams to match. And I did cut down that piece a little bit more. It was just a little bit too wide. And I folded that in half, and then I just used my ruler to kind of mark where I wanted to glue these seams. I only wanted to glue them about 6 inches up. So this is a no-sew fabric project, which I don't know about you guys, but I always love being able to do these projects like this and not have to drag out my sewing machine. So I just used fabric glue and went all the way up to the marks that I had put on my fabric on both sides. And to make my little bunny ears, so I just use a pen to kind of just rough out some shapes that look like little bunny ears. These do not have to be perfect at all, you guys. Don't stress about making these look perfect. Just freehand it if you're comfortable doing that. It worked really well for me this way. And I just cut those out with some scissors. And while I was making these, I thought these would be super cute to do as little Easter treat bags for your kids or grandkids. Or I have a Sunday school class that I teach, so I thought I might make some of these for my little kids in my class and fill them with little goodies and treats for Easter. And I have never done box corners, you guys, with hot glue, but it worked really well. So all I did, this is going to be hard to explain, I know. I took my bag and I folded the corners up on either side, just trimmed that off a little bit. And this is going to make a box corner, is what this is called when you do sewing projects and things. And this will just allow your little rabbit to stand up when you display it. Just folded that up. You're just making a little triangle there. You're folding the tip of your triangle onto that seam that you have just made when you glued up the sides with your hot glue. I hope you guys watching this can figure that out instead of listening to how I'm trying to explain it. And I just measured that to see how tall I had made my little corner there, just so I could get the other side even, so my little bunny wouldn't be kind of crooked and cattywampus and not sit up straight. And I just did that same thing on the other side. Just made my little triangle corner and glued that with my hot glue. Just make sure that you pull out the bottom once you get both of those glued together, and turn your little bunny pouch right side out. And then you can just kind of push out those corners and the edges that you have just made with your box corners. And I used some rice to put in the bottom of each of my little fabric bunnies. This will just help it stand up a little bit better as well. And I added some of my polyfill stuffing. And be sure you don't add too much of that stuffing. You don't want to add it above where your little ears are, or it will stick out on you. And to tie this, I just used a small piece of jute twine, and I just kind of had to play around with the ears and get them where I wanted them to go. Made sure all of my loose edges and ends were kind of tucked in under that jute before I tied it into a knot, and then I tied it into a cute little bow. And I did use just a little dab of hot glue on the ears just so I could glue those back and front pieces together so they would look a little nicer. And of course, these cute little bunnies have to have a little bunny tail, so I used cotton balls for that. If you guys have pom-poms in your stash, feel free to use those as well. But I just love the little bunny tail on these. It's so cute. And this one I made well, actually I made 5 of these, you guys. This brown one, I just took some of one of those little wooden eggs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. Those came in, I think, a 12 or 16 pack. So I just pulled one of those out and added it to the jute twine to the bow for this little brown fabric bunny, and that is it. But aren't these so cute, you guys? I just love these. I was actually talking to my mom when I was making these, and she's like, I think I'm going to want one of those. So, of course, I had to do extra to give her one. But what do you guys think about these? I have been redoing all of my pictures around my house, so I've been pulling down frames that I have and just kind of stashing them because I've been getting new ones that match. So I found this one that I had pulled off the wall and just stuck under my cabinet. I wanted a wooden frame for this project, and this one was perfect. I did want it to be a little bit darker, so I just used some of my antique wax from Waverly and just darkened up that wood frame just a little bit for this project. And I wanted it a little bit darker because I did go back in with some of my chalk paint in the color plaster, and I just gave this a very light distressing, just kind of lightened that up, gave it more of a vintage vibe. If you guys have been with me from the beginning of my videos, you know I love farmhouse, vintage, antique, rustic, all those things, shabby chic. That's just my vibe that I really like. And I needed a kind of a wooden background for this frame. I'm not going to be putting the glass back in there. So this is just one of those tags that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I just measured that down to size by using the paper that came out of the frame. And I just cut that down with some miter shears, actually, is what I started with. And then that wasn't working very well. It worked until I got to the center. And then I just used my box cutter and scored that. Just kept running over that line until I was able to kind of break that piece off that I needed. And just to cover the back of this, I just took some of that brown paper, once again, that I keep in my stash, and just cut that down to size to fit on the back of that wooden piece. And I just used my Elmer's glue stick to attach that. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just like to make sure all of my projects look professional and completely finished. And on the front side of that wooden piece, I just took some of my Waverly chalk paint in the color celery, and I did a very light coat of this. I wanted some of that brown kind of showing through. I wanted it to look a little bit streaky and not just freshly painted. And I had found these really cute bunny designs once again on Creative Fabrica. Be sure you check the description box. I will link everything that I can that I used from today's video there for you if you want to check those out. And I printed this out on a couple of different things. I did one on just computer paper, and then I did the other one on the tissue paper like I like to do. I cut out the one on computer paper, so that would be my template. And then I had picked up a piece of foam board from the Dollar General. This was just $1. So I just traced that out onto the foam board. I wanted this bunny to kind of pop off the background just a little bit, just to have a little bit of a 3D effect, but not too much. And then I just used my little X-Acto knife that I got from Cricut, and I just cut out that piece smaller. It was easier to work with that way. I just cut out a rectangle first and removed that piece from the larger piece of my foam board. And then I just took my X-Acto knife and went around all of the edges of my design just to cut out my little bunny shape. And do you guys cut out foam board a lot? If you know something that works better than the X-Acto knife or scissors, let me know in the comments down below. And I did just flip this over. I know it's really hard to see on camera, but I had kind of little score marks on the back. That was just easier for me to do. It wasn't going all the way through from front to back with this knife. So I just went on the back and just went over those score lines that I had made while cutting the front. And then I was able to finally just pop out my little bunny shape from my foam board. And then I just removed my tissue paper print from my computer paper. You just pull off the tape and just carefully remove your tissue paper from your printer paper. And I just went around and cut out that design as well and got that ready to apply to my little foam board bunny. And I probably could have used the one that I printed on computer paper, but I just like the way that tissue paper looks when you print a design on there. I think it looks more kind of like an art piece maybe. And I just put a thin layer of Mod Podge onto my foam board. I did not let this dry, you guys. I generally let my Mod Podge dry and go back in with my tissue paper or napkin or whatever I am working with and just iron that on with my little Cricut mini press. But I was afraid that I would melt the foam board if I did that. You could probably do that on the lowest setting with the mini press and it would work okay. I was just afraid that it would melt that foam board. So I just applied my tissue paper while that Mod Podge was still wet, and I just smoothed that out. I started in the center and just carefully pressed that down with my fingers. I did still have some wrinkles in that tissue paper, but I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me at all. And once that layer of Mod Podge had dried, I did go back around all of the edges of my little bunny cut out, and I painted those with that same celery color from Waverly. I just wanted all of those edges to blend in a little bit better on this piece. And to seal everything down, I went back in with another layer of Mod Podge over my entire little bunny. And I just love all of those colors and all of the different flowers on this design. I just think it is so pretty, and it matches very well with all of the other pieces that I have made in today's video. And I just popped my wooden piece back into my frame. I wasn't sure if I had gotten all of the edges straight enough to where I would be able to get that back in there, but I did, thank goodness. And I was able to actually put the backing on to the back of my picture as well. I wasn't sure that would fit with that extra thickness from that wood piece. And just to attach my bunny to the front, I used a little bit of hot glue. And this fit perfectly in my frame. I had pre-measured my design before I started cutting everything out, and I just centered that into my frame. And this is ready to go with all of my other Easter decor. I just love the colors on this one. And I just love how this one turned out. That wraps up all of our Easter decor projects. I hope you guys enjoyed all of these and they inspire you to make some vintage decor for your home this year. Please let me know which of these was your favorite in the comments down below. I always enjoy reading all of those and I try to respond to each of them. I would love to connect with you on Facebook and Instagram. You can find links to both of those in the description box as well. Please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos coming out. I hope you all have a blessed day and I will see you in the next one.